This episode is about a writer who was worried about the wrong things when it came to her memoir. She thought that her writing was the problem when really the vision behind her manuscript was foggy. And when that happens, it fogs up everything else. I want to take you behind the scenes today of my high-level editing work and show you how to figure out what your actual problem is, because it's not that you are a bad writer. I want to tell you about a client that I worked with a couple of years ago, and she came to me really excited. She had a very manic start to her memoir writing. She had gone through something really transformative, and she knew that she could tap into an experience and a problem for her readers that would really transform how they experienced their own lives and how they saw themselves. She was so committed to the vision and the purpose of her memoir. She knew exactly why she was writing this. She knew exactly the impact that she wanted to have, which is such a great place to start. And so she had this really intense beginning, and she came to me with what she considered a full draft. And she thought that she was ready for line edits, which is the level of editing where we really dial into your actual writing quality. This is where we really refine your words, your prose, really make sure that everything flows together, that you're making it very engaging. We're working on the actual line level quality of the writing. So when she was ready to start self-edits, which is a really important step in the process, she didn't really know where to start. She had such an intense beginning to the writing process. She had written so many words, but she didn't quite know where to go from here. She could tell that she was a little stuck. Stuff wasn't flowing as well as it happened at the beginning of her writing. And so she came to me and we started working together. And she described her frustration like this: I had all of these stories and it all is so meaningful to me, but I can't quite figure out what ties them together. And as I read through her manuscript for a manuscript evaluation, which is how I start off all of my high-level work, I could tell that she didn't really know what was going to tie her thoughts together and her experiences, because what she was doing was she was pouring out her experiences. She was sharing why they were important to her, but there wasn't a thread that made it relevant to her reader, right? So she tried adding more words, she tried shuffling things around, and none of that was solving the problem. She thought that we were going to start with those line level edits, because she thought that the quality of her writing was that missing piece. But first, we had to dial into her memoir's message. We had to figure out its bigger purpose and its relevance for her reader. See, a lot of writers come into memoir editing at this stage. You are so convicted in your writing, in your story. You know why you are writing it. You are so passionate about sharing your story because you were so transformed by your experiences. You understand that there are other people who are struggling with whatever it was that you're struggling with, and you want to make that connection. So you have such a deep inner purpose and drive for writing, and that is so important to the memoir writing process. What's missing for you, however, is that you aren't quite bridging that gap between your passion and why your reader needs to be passionate about your memoir. The deeper reason why memoirists feel stuck is that they don't have a clear message. They are clear on the purpose on why they're writing it, but why you are writing does not equate to a clear message that's going to connect to a reader. So let me dive into that a little bit more. Your reader, and if you've been around for a bit, you will have heard me say this before, but your reader doesn't care about what happened to you. They care about what you did with what happened to you. And even further than that, they care about your story's relevance to them. You need to make sure that your memoir is relevant, that there's something in your message that's going to click with your reader. Because you on your own, as a character, as a writer, are probably not going to be enough for your reader to pick up your book and to care about it. And I don't say that to minimize your experience, to invalidate what you've been through. I'm coming at this from an editorial perspective, because with memoir, we're not writing a journal. We're not just dumping our own experiences out there to get them out. We're writing for a reader. and you are writing because you want to help somebody else. You want to make that connection. You want to connect with your reader in a way that makes an impact. So many writers that I work with want to help people. They don't want someone else to go through what they went through. And they have a strong belief, a very valid belief that their story can help other people. And there's so many ways that stories can help people, right? That conviction is a great place to start. It still is not going to answer the question of why should your reader care about your memoir? And so that's what we had to dial in first. And so this is the shift that changed everything for this writer. She came to me with this passion. She came to me with this really raw first draft, but she didn't know why her reader should care about it, right? And she told me that once I understood my message, my book finally made sense. Once we understood what she was actually trying to do with her story, what message is her story a vehicle for? Once we figured that out, then we could figure out the structure. Then we could work on the prose, on the actual writing quality. We could figure out which stories to amplify and build out and which ones to streamline, where to use dialogue, where to pull in all of these narrative techniques. We couldn't do that effectively unless we knew the purpose of her story, and not just the purpose of her writing it, but its purpose for her reader. Okay? So we spent the first bit of our editorial time together refining this foundation of her memoir. We figured out what she was actually writing, who she was writing for, and why they are going to care about it. And this process requires some objectivity. It requires some deeper contemplation, and it requires a very big picture lens, okay? And I walk writers through this all the time. And it's such a perspective shift because you start to realize I am writing for a reader. I need to think about them actively. I need to be very specific on who they are, what they need, where they are, wherever they are on their timeline, because the you who's writing your memoir is not the same person who experienced it, right? So we really need to tap into the reader on the other side because it's not someone who's at where you are now, okay? So this is a short episode today, but what I want to close with is a question I want you to ponder on. I want you to come back to me with, find me on Instagram, pop into my DMs, send me an email. But I want you to think about if you're feeling stuck in your memoir writing, it's really easy to think that the problem is your actual writing, that you're not good enough at it. You haven't figured out the structure yet. And those are all things that we tackle in edits, that I tackle with my writers. But what if your actual problem is that you don't have clarity on what your story's here to do? And most memoir writers don't have enough clarity on what their story is trying to do and what they need to do and what their reader needs from it. So that's what I want you to contemplate after you sign off on this podcast episode, after we wrap up. Because when you know why your reader is going to care about your story and you know who that reader is, that is where we really tap into the magic of memoir writing, the clarity. The process of that is going to light up different parts of you creatively, and it's going to make memoir writing fun again. So working with this one writer was so much fun, not only because she was so passionate about her story, but once we dialed into her message, that passion and that conviction jumped. It skyrocketed, and it made it so that we could really build out a story and a manuscript that had so much impact. The manuscript that we ended with versus what we started with was 10 times better, truly 10 times better from what she came to me with. And that is something that you can do when you have clarity around your manuscript. So just spend some time thinking about that over the next little bit, because I know that you are nervous about how good of a writer you actually are. So many writers come to me afraid that they're not a very good writer, or that their story isn't really worth pursuing. That's never the real issue. Yes, I work on line level writing and editing with my clients. I want to help them improve their writing, and I do that. We do that together. And that work, that line level work, is so much more effective when we know what we're actually writing, okay? And I had a writer tell me recently, if I knew why I was writing, I know how to write it. And that's exactly true. When you know why you're writing, then the actual writing process, the actual structure, the actual way to convey the story and the message is so much easier to discern, because you know the bigger picture. When you are crystal clear on the message of your memoir, the rest of the writing flows so much more easily. And then we can put our attention on the elements of memoir, like your structure and your line level work. So I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation with you. And so please feel free to email me, DM me on Instagram, because what you're feeling frustrated with in your writing is actually very common for memoir writers. And the solution is so much more simple than you've convinced yourself. You don't have a writing problem, you have a clarity problem. And so that's what I want you to think about. That's what I want you to focus on and start to shift your perspective that way. It's my favorite perspective shift to see with writers, is to see that click when they realize that they've been focusing on the wrong thing. And then when they start to focus on the right thing, that's when the progress really starts happening. So thanks for tuning in today. I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation on the thread of your memoir, and I will see you on Friday.